He had been learning magic since he was young until one day he was banished from his party because they thought he was weak, when in fact he was the strongest SS rank warrior. A young boy sits by the river quietly fishing when a wizard suddenly appears and asks if he'd like to learn magic. Though confused, the boy eagerly agrees and the sorcerer Eldest begins training him, explaining that someday he'll have companions whose lives will depend on his magic. Magic, Eldest says, is simply turning one's breath into something special. When the boy releases his first spell and hits the target, he beams with pride despite the exhausting day. Eldest praises him, noting that what others take a month to learn he mastered in a single day. But training ends there. The impatient child pouts, wanting to learn more, but his master reminds him that those who rush eat their food raw, suggesting they catch a fish before sunset. Eldest hopes to relax the boy's mind, though Alec keeps insisting on more practice. Smiling, the wizard tells him he has a natural gift for magic and will surely become a great sorcerer, but he must let time flow as calmly as the river before them. Curious, Alec asks why the wizard chose to teach him, but before Eldest can reply, his fishing line suddenly jerks. He's caught something. Eldest and Alec focused on the catch, though Eldest clearly had no idea what to do next. The boy teased the adult for being brilliant with spells but hopeless at fishing. After some struggle and a clumsy fall, they finally caught the fish and burst into laughter. The following day, Alec tried to master a magic formula and Eldest told him that once he grasped the pattern behind it, things would become easier. They spent hours studying together, making steady progress until Snowfall turned their lesson into a snowball fight. Alec cherished every moment with his master. But one day, Eldest told him he was leaving the capital and advised him never to become a court mage if he had the chance. Confused, Alec asked why Eldest had taught him magic at all. The wizard revealed it was to repay a favor owed to Alec's late mother. Years later, while studying at the Royal Academy of Magic, Alec discovered from the archives that Eldest had once been the Academy's most brilliant student before being banished as a court mage. Realizing the source of his teacher's sorrow, Alec vowed to reform the court to honor his mentor's kindness. Yet to do that, he would first have to become a court mage himself, a path that fate would make far crueler than he ever imagined. After becoming one of the court's magicians, Alec was dismissed from his group by Prince Regulus of Galdana. Lenny and Ix laughed as the prince expelled him, claiming Alec failed to protect him properly. During missions, Regulus led the charge, Lenny attacked with fire magic, and Ix absorbed blows, leaving Alec to handle only defense and enchantments. Pathetic, they said, for a court mage. When Alec tried to explain, his teammates called him a coward who always avoided deeper dungeon levels. Lenny, who had kept quiet because the prince had assigned Alec to them, finally declared she refused to explore with a useless loser. Though Regulus admitted Alec had excelled at the academy, he said the mage had become nothing but dead weight. He took Alec's dagger, reminding him that commoners couldn't carry weapons, and accused him of acting independently. Finally, Regulus tore off his robe, saying he didn't deserve the title. Stunned and humiliated, Alec could only watch as his team walked away. But even then, he didn't give up and continued to study and improve. After learning that the prince couldn't use magic, Alec decided to make up for his highness's weakness, hoping it would let him serve his old group again. Deep down, he still wished to return and prove his worth. But soon, reality began to shut its doors on him, literally. The next day, when he tried to enter the capital, the guards stopped him, saying that without his court mage title, he was just another commoner. In the middle of the commotion, Lenny appeared to back them up, repeating that commoners weren't allowed inside. She even mocked him, saying she'd heard he'd broken the royal dungeon record from level 37 to 60 back in the academy, but was still just a boaster in her eyes. When she turned to leave, Alec pleaded with her to deliver a letter to the king, reminding her he had joined Regulus's team under royal orders. Lenny took the letter, tore it to pieces before his eyes, and closed the gate, crushing the last of his hope. Standing there on the empty street, Alec reflected on his 4 years as a court mage and asked Eldest for forgiveness for failing to change the imperial court. As he lingered in thought, someone suddenly embraced him warmly. Looking up, he saw a bright smile. It was Yora, his old friend. After 4 years apart, Alec and Yora quickly caught up. He shared his struggles and she finally understood his gloom. Yora confessed she'd always hated Galdana's rigid class system and was glad he'd left the court. Keeping her old promise, she invited Alec to join her in dungeon adventures. Though he hesitated, haunted by being cast out as useless, Yora just laughed, saying she needed no one but Alec Igret, unless he preferred crawling back to the court. Moved, he took her hand, and together they joined the A-ranked group lasting period. The next morning, Alec dreamed of Eldest warning him not to become a court mage before the carriage's jolt woke him. As they rode toward Fizzle, Yora urged him to rest for the long journey ahead. Meanwhile, in the capital, Prince Regulus learned Alec had vanished. Lenny said it had been 5 days and that rumors claimed he turned adventurer. Regulus sneered, calling Alec a coward for fleeing despite once being hailed a prodigy. Lenny cheered that they no longer had to drag that useless man around, and now with Lord Vaughan from Duke Fornius' house, their dungeon conquest would surely bring Regulus fame. Hours later, Alec and Yora arrived in Fizzle, the city of dungeons, and their team's base. Before joining the expedition, Alec had to register at the Adventurers Guild, but the receptionist rejected him for lacking a city pass and proper licenses, which required 2 years of experience. Yora protested, saying Krasia had promised to handle it, but the clerk said she'd been rude and unhelpful. Frustrated, Yora blamed herself for trusting her and took a bite of her sandwich, muttering that their team had already reached level 52. They couldn't afford to wait 2 years. After swallowing the sandwich, Yora stopped complaining and shifted her thoughts to finding other dungeons to explore. Since they were in the city of dungeons, she figured they could start with an easier one to warm up. Standing up, she welcomed Alec to Fizzle, hoping he'd enjoy the place. As night fell, they entered a forest swarming with flying insects. Yora cast an enhancement spell to boost Alec's speed and strength, allowing him to take down several enemies swiftly. But soon, a larger swarm appeared, clearly panicked by something that had disturbed their nest. Yora raised her magic shield and moved to face them alone, while Alec, drained from his time away from magic after being expelled from the court, struggled to cast spells and fought hand-to-hand. Seeing Yora in danger, he forced himself to focus and released a powerful fire spell that burned through the swarm. Regaining confidence, he resumed fighting as Yora shielded him. Despite being outnumbered, their teamwork shone through. Yora strengthened her barrier while Alec summoned a storm of lightning that annihilated the insects. Just as they caught their breath, a massive earthworm erupted from the ground, seizing Yora's scepter in its jaws and lifting it high into the air. Instead of falling into despair, Alec remembers that his partner is the best support mage in the academy, and she answers that her comrade is the finest attack sorcerer. Both agree that the only one drunk here is the worm, and Alec Egret summons a massive fire tornado that engulfs the monster. Yora shields herself from the scorching heat as Alec's flames obliterate the earthworm. Victorious, they praise each other's performance, and Yora laughs, saying her friend hasn't changed at all. The scene shifts to a dungeon where a lancer's spear fails to pierce a monster's hard shell. As the Hydra lunges to devour him, his teammate's arrow saves the day, though the lancer still complains. The creature retaliates with a fireball, but Yora raises an ice wall to block it, then counters an electric sphere with a wall of earth. Overwhelmed by the relentless attacks, she starts to falter until Alec arrives and unleashes a devastating spell that annihilates the Hydra instantly. With that victory, the archer announces they cleared the 68th floor, setting a new dungeon record. To celebrate, the 4 companions shout their team's name, lasting period, vowing to write their everlasting story together. To the Magical Academy, where they were celebrated as the most outstanding batch in years. Their instructor, Rosa, could tell there was something special about them. Their teamwork and harmony were unmatched. Though they came back from the dungeons with bruises and cuts, their smiles showed pride, having shattered the all-time record by conquering the level 68 dungeon, far surpassing the previous record holders who only reached the 32nd floor. When graduation day arrived, Rosa announced the results. Rain ranked 4th, Krasia 3rd, Yora 2nd, and Alex stood at the top as class valedictorian, achieving the highest scores in recent history. Filled with joy and laughter, they teased their instructor and got playfully scolded for it. As they left the academy together, other students watched in awe, believing they were witnessing the birth of a future legendary party. But soon after, Alex shocked his teammates by revealing he didn't wish to continue as an adventurer and instead planned to become a court magician. Though surprised, they understood it was a safer job with stable pay. Despite their disappointment, they never held it against him and sincerely wished him the best. Yora once promised they'd reunite as teammates, and that promise now comes true as she and Alex celebrate in a bar. After one drink, Yora becomes blackout drunk, ranting about not being allowed into deeper dungeons before passing out on the bench. Smiling, Alex covers her with his jacket, recalling her similar antics back in the academy. A man in the bar, clearly hostile toward SS ranks and obsessed with his Sigma grind, mocks Alec as a beta male. Alec ignores him, but the man, an Andrew Tate fanboy, snaps and tries to smash a bottle over Alec's head. Alec calmly blocks it with a mana shield. Amused to finally get his attention, the man admits he knows Alec is a court magician and didn't expect someone like him to chase an adventurer's life. Then, to Alec's surprise, the burly man places an adventurer's pass on the table, saying it's an apology for the earlier test, but adds a condition: Alec must demonstrate his magic to claim it. Alec is still puzzled when Yora groggily wakes up, calling the man Guildmaster and asking what he's doing there. Confused, Alec wonders why the Guildmaster would just hand him a pass, but the man casually does so and leads them to the underground training area, where he tests parties aiming to level up. He tells Alec to show his strength. Yorha warns it's not the best time since Alec's been drinking, but Alec insists he still has enough mana. The guildmaster introduces himself as Liviel, and Alec immediately recalls he's a former S-rank mage. Liviel laughs, calling those days a blur, then explains this simple condition. Alec just needs to impress him with magic. They prepare a spar. Alec starts with Thunderbolt magic, but Liviel easily dodges encounters with water magic, forcing Alec to dodge as well. Realizing Liviel's range advantage, Alec shifts to close combat, but Liviel enhances himself with reinforcement magic, moving at blinding speed. He circles Alec and lands a powerful punch that Alec barely blocks with his mana shield. The shield shatters under the impact, sending Alec crashing into the wall. Liviel, impressed by his endurance, notes that few could survive such a hit. Alec emerges from the dust, acknowledging Liviel as a true S-ranked adventurer. Liviel, expecting fear, is surprised by Alec's calmness. Alec admits he keeps forgetting he's no longer a rule-bound court magician limited to defense. Now he's free to unleash his full power. Liviel laughs and challenges him to go all out. Alec transforms his staff into a magic blade as Liviel hurls water balloons again, but Alec dodges and tricks him by faking an attack. When Liviel charges with boosted speed, Alec triggers a trap, striking him with lightning before slicing through him. Liviel, momentarily still, praises Alec's strength but isn't finished. He activates his trump card, dragon-scale gauntlets that amplify his power, and charges. Alec barely evades as Liviel's punch creates a crater. Undeterred, Alec fires another lightning spell, which Liviel shrugs off without flinching. Liviel charges through the attack and swings at Alec, who blocks with his shield but is pushed back. Thinking of how to handle the monster, Alec braces as Liviel activates his gauntlet's healing ability. Knowing a long fight favors Liviel, Alec goes on the offensive, slashing nonstop. Liviel blocks every strike, mocking Alec to do better. Alec fires back with taunts, angering the guildmaster, who throws a powerful punch that Alec dodges, countering swiftly. Furious, Liviel smashes the wall as Alec slips beneath, only for Liviel to keep pressing. Alec blocks and aims for a decisive hit, but Liviel endures and retaliates with a double-handed strike that fills the air with dust. When it clears, Alec stands unhurt and attacks again, only for his body to suddenly weaken. He's out of mana and collapses. Yorha rushes to heal him with regeneration magic. Then Rain appears, teasing Liviel for using his strongest move on a lower-ranked fighter. Irritated, Liviel snaps that he was only testing Alec's limits and would pass him anyway. Rain carries Alec to a room so he can rest and sits oddly on his legs while they talk about how long it's been since they were together. Suddenly, the receptionist bursts in saying she needs the guildmaster, but Liviel drags her out. Rain then grabs some booze and asks Yorha to explain what happened to Alec. As she finishes, Rain trembles with rage, learning Alec's party made him carry their gear, handle inventory, restricted his magic to defense only, and forbade him from using even a dagger. Shocked, Rain asks how Alec managed defensive magic since he was terrible at it in the academy. Yorha explains Alec trained from scratch until his defense magic nearly matched hers. Furious that Alec was still called worthless and exiled despite protecting the crown prince, Rain crushes the bottle in anger, waking Alec. Seeing Rain surprises him, and Yorha cheerfully says the guildmaster granted permission, making Alec excited to join higher-level dungeons. But Rain says that can wait. First, they need revenge. They plan to sneak into the royal city, infiltrate the palace, and beat the prince's party, but Alec refuses, and Yorha reminds them that fighting others is forbidden. Alec pats Rain's shoulder, saying he's content just enjoying their adventure, no longer caring about the court. Rain then declares they should become the strongest party in the world, which would surely anger the prince and let them reject any future pleas for help. Alec agrees, seeing it as the perfect compromise. Meanwhile, the injured S-ranked adventurer Krista is treated by a receptionist as the guildmaster calls an emergency meeting, summoning all A-ranked adventurers for a rescue mission on the 64th floor. Back in Alec's room, he meets Krasia, whose dual personalities have matured. When asked why he's not at the meeting, he replies he's unranked. She heals him instantly with magic, raising questions about why bandages were used on Krista. Yorha and Rain burst in, excited about the rescue mission, explaining that magic can be used on that floor, leaving adventurers reliant on potions. Since the S-ranked team was wiped out, Krista was sent alone for help. Alec asks Krasia if she's fine with it, but she protests, saying Rain forced the decision. They argue until Yorha says it's Alec's choice since he'll face the main boss. Alec accepts, and as they stand before the dungeon entrance, Rain proclaims this will be the beginning of their party's legend. They arrive at the dungeon entrance where healing magic is nullified, forcing them to rely solely on potions and agility to survive. Krasia's teammates are trapped near the level 64 boss, but clearing every floor beforehand would take too long. Rain points this out, but Yorha reveals a magic crystal from Krasia, capable of teleporting them straight to level 64. Alec recognizes it as a rare item, yet Krejcia's only concern is rescuing her guildmates. Yora warns that the level 64 boss is an undead, rendering Krejcia ineffective, and since she's a support mage, Alec will have to handle most of the fight. Rain advises him to conserve mana and let him deal with weaker enemies, not wanting Alec drained before the boss. Krejcia cautions that this dungeon is death itself, and even S-ranked adventurers fell here. Instead of faltering, Rain's excitement grows. He declares that their legend begins now. Yora then throws the crystal into the air, and in an instant, they're teleported to level 64, a dark cave where skeletal warriors rise from the ground, weapons in hand. Rain showed no fear as he drew his black spear and charged at the skeletons, cutting them down effortlessly while boasting that level 64 felt too easy. More skeletons appeared, but he continued slashing through them without hesitation. Yora grew worried when he moved out of her support range and ran after him, calling his name. Krejcia reassured her, saying Rain would be fine since his ancient artifact, the piercing black spear, was nearly indestructible and perfect for someone as reckless as him. Alec offered to help, but Rain laughed it off, calling the fight child's play. Alec smiled and followed until he suddenly sensed a strange presence behind him. Instinctively, he fired a lightning bolt, but when the dust settled, nothing was there. Confused, he mentioned it might have been a false alarm, then suddenly drew his sword and slashed the air. His strike met resistance as an invisible force blocked it, revealing itself to be the Grim Reaper. Rain grinned, teasing that Alec wasn't as rusty as he thought, admitting he had sensed the enemy but wasn't skilled at fighting invisible foes. The Grim Reaper countered, forcing Alec back before launching another attack that Alec barely managed to deflect as he leaped beside Rain. Alec felt Rain's trust and confidence in him, a bond he hadn't experienced in years, which reignited his spirit. With renewed energy, he leaped into the air, his magic sword slicing clean through the Grim Reaper. Turning to Yora, he asked if she'd known about Rain's plan. She quickly apologized, while Krejcia told him to take it up with Rain since it was his idea. Alec just smiled, promising to repay Rain someday, to which Rain replied they had to survive the dungeon first. The four regrouped, ready to fight. Alec and Rain charged ahead, cutting through waves of undead as Yora boosted them with spells. Rain followed Flare, cutting down skeletons while Krejcia covered him with precise arrows. As the endless waves pressed in, Alec called everyone back and unleashed a massive thunderbolt, obliterating the horde in one strike. When the dust settled, Rain asked why Alec only used thunder magic. He remembered the days when Alec wielded many kinds of spells at the academy. Alec excuses himself, claiming Thunderbolt is the fastest spell to cast, but Rain senses he's hiding something and lets it go due to their limited time. A monstrous roar echoes ahead, likely from the boss room, prompting Rain to prepare. After Yora casts reinforcement magic, he dashes forward faster than Yusuzane, with Alec and the two girls following close behind. They emerge into an open area where Rain sits atop a ledge, watching a giant monster chase a bowl-cut adventurer. Alec wants to help, but Rain recognizes the man as Loki from the Rechroma party, known for being arrogant. Krejcia confirms Loki is a crafty support magician, though Alec doubts it as Loki screams for help, threatening to haunt Rain if he dies. Rain ignores him until Loki trips, seemingly doomed. Alec readies to intervene, but Krejcia stops him, saying this is Loki's style. Moments later, a trap spell triggers beneath the monster, erupting in lava. Shocked, Alec watches as more traps ignite, bombarding the creature with fire, while Krejcia remarks that Loki truly is a cunning magician. Loki laughs at the monster for tripping, calling it an idiot, until its furious roar and a charged magical blast wipe the grin off his face. Realizing death is seconds away, he braces for the end, but Rain saves him just in time. Shocked to still be alive, Loki watches as Alec and the girls join the fight. When the monster attacks Alec, Yora blocks it with her shield. Alec counters with a thunder spell, yet the creature redirects its rage toward Rain and Loki. Alec shouts a warning and fires another bolt, but it barely slows the beast. Seeing it closing in, Rain dashes forward, slipping beneath its legs to distract it, then hurls Loki toward Krejcia. Yora orders Krejcia to get Loki to safety while Rain readies his spear. Once Krejcia confirms Loki's safe, Yora empowers Rain with her magic. Rain charges, dodges the monster's attacks, and leaps high to strike its face with his spear. The monster thrashes violently, flinging him to the ground. As it moves to crush him, Yora shields Rain at the last moment, buying him enough time to rise again for the final stand. Alec acted like a conductor in an orchestra, forming 5 magic circles around the monster. Loki remarked that even 3 were hard to make, but Alec was already pushing past limits. To her astonishment, he expanded the number to 20. As the monster charged, Rain leaped onto its back and stabbed its tail, buying Alec time to complete his spell. He jumped clear just as Alec unleashed a surge of thunderbolts that paralyzed the creature. When Alec tried to deliver the final blow, the monster dodged and began charging its own magic. Krasia quickly cast a blinding spell, and Yoro followed with chains of magic to hold it down. Seizing the moment, Rain hurled his spear like a javelin, piercing the monster's head. Yet even mortally wounded, it tried one last desperate blast. Alec stood firm, invoking a spell known only to him and his master, Elders. As the monster's attack flew toward him, Alec used reflection magic, sending it back with twice the force. Incredibly, the monster endured, barely alive, and began charging again. Alec combines his reflection magic with multiple magic circles, trapping the beast in a blazing inferno that reduces it to ashes. Rain ends it by slicing the monster's head in half. Their brief celebration is interrupted when Loki appears, thanking Alec and noting he's the court magician. Alec replies he left that position, to which Loki calls it the prince's loss. Then Loki shocks everyone by revealing the creature wasn't the real floor boss, but a sub-boss foolish enough to chase him and get isolated. The group is stunned, realizing how powerful the true boss must be. Loki explains the sub-boss was a necromancer disguised as a black-armored knight, resistant to physical attacks. Turning to Alec, he presents a wand with a cross-shaped head, an ancient artifact that transforms into a sword in Alec's hands. Rain doubts Loki's generosity, asking why he gives such a relic away. Loki just laughs, saying Alec will be bait in the vanguard. The others are confused until he explains that Alec's weak appearance will lure the boss in, letting them ambush it and claim the glory of defeating an S-ranked monster. As Alec and his team battle for survival in the dungeons, the prince and his party face their own struggle in another dungeon across the continent. Unlike Alec's group, who move skillfully and defeat powerful foes, the prince's team scrambles in panic from a swarm of caterpillar monsters. Confused, the prince wonders why such weak creatures now feel impossible to handle when they used to be mere warm-ups. He orders his mage to attack, but she breaks down crying instead. Furious, he calls them useless and charges ahead, vowing to slay the monsters himself. His sword bounces off their hardened skin, and a single hit from one of them sends him crashing to the ground, forcing his party to drag him to safety. As they flee, the prince feels his body sluggish and his sword unbearably heavy. It dawns on him that everything changed after he expelled Alec, the court magician whose support magic had secretly amplified their strength. Yet instead of realizing the truth, the prince convinces himself that Alec must have cursed him in revenge. After returning to the palace and being treated by his physicians, the prince immediately summons his mage Vogan to examine what curse might be afflicting him. After a brief inspection, Vogan concludes there is no curse at all. The prince refuses to believe it, insisting on a red check, claiming it's impossible for him to struggle against a mere level 30 monster when he's conquered floors beyond level 40. Vogan calmly suggests the difficulty could stem from the lack of magical support. The remark wounds the prince's pride, and he arrogantly declares that support magic is worthless, something only weak adventurers rely on. Knowing better than to argue with his ignorant master, Vogan merely asks if Alec hadn't warned them that reinforcement spells fail on the 30th floor. The prince scoffs, dismissing Alec as a mere peasant unworthy of belief. Vogan, however, reminds him that Alec once belonged to the legendary party that reached floor 68 before graduation. The prince laughs it off, calling such feats peasant fantasies meant to comfort the weak. Realizing it's pointless to continue, Vogan falls silent just as a messenger enters, announcing that the king has summoned the prince to discuss matters concerning Alec, the former court mage. The prince rises and heads to the court with Vogan, where he finds his father seated on the throne and asks what he wishes to discuss. The king brings up the court mage named Eldaz, whom the prince barely remembers from childhood. The king explains that Eldaz, once a noble and royal mage, was outspoken against discrimination and urged reform in the kingdom's system. Enraged by such defiance, the king had stripped him of his titles and banished him. The prince laughs, calling the mage a fool for speaking that way to a king. With a sorrowful look, the king reveals that Eldaz later enrolled in the Magic Academy as a commoner, excelled beyond all expectations, and returned to court purely through merit. Even then, he kept pressing for fair treatment of commoners, one of whom had even saved the king's life, until he mysteriously vanished. The prince, puzzled by his father's tale, asks why he's telling him this, and the king finally states that the time has come to reform the kingdom and seek out gifted commoners like Alec. The prince was stunned, calling Alec a worthless commoner unfit for anything. But the king revealed a torn parchment Alec had left behind, showing a full map of the 30th floor with every monster and method of clearing it. The king explained that only someone who had conquered that floor multiple times could write it with such precision. Shocked, the prince argued that seeking a commoner's help went against everything his father had taught him. Lowering his gaze, the king admitted his mistakes and vowed to change, declaring that from now on, merit would matter more than status. The prince, unable to accept it, excused himself from court, claiming illness. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Loki discussed tactics with the group, telling Alec to rely solely on the sword he'd given him and avoid using magic. Confused, Alec protested that the monster was immune to physical damage, making a sword useless. Kreja then realized Loki's intent to deceive the boss into believing Alec was a swordsman, not a mage, but she remained unsure why it mattered, since the monster would attack anything it saw anyway. Loki confidently insists the monster is not only intelligent but a skilled sword master capable of planning ahead. Alec is shocked yet eager to see such a creature himself. They agree on the plan, though the boss room remains far. Loki, however, proposes teleportation. Yora panics, reminding them that teleportation magic is highly restricted to top officials, but Rain suspects Loki could have stolen it. As Loki draws a magic circle, Alec and Yora quietly plan to blame him if things go wrong. Alec still doubts Loki, yet Yora admits that while he's untrustworthy, he's reliable. 2 years ago, Loki led a raid on a high-ranking dungeon without casualties, and his party's leader is known for his integrity. Reassured, Alec smiles and prepares for battle. When Loki finishes the circle, they step onto it as the ground glows purple. Yora is stunned to see the spell actually works, and Loki warns them to stay sharp. They're teleporting straight into the boss room. They crash onto Rain and quickly spot a massive Dark Knight clashing with a party of 3. The mage shouts for one member to get help, saying they'll need at least a rank M mage to survive. The girl runs off while the small fighter attacks, but his strike is blocked, and the mage's fire spells barely scorch the knight's armor. Realizing they're hopelessly outmatched, the elf hesitates until Rain dashes past with blinding speed, thrusting his spear at the knight. The monster parries and shoves him back, thrilling Rain with its strength. Alec tries to strike from behind, but the knight leaps away and retaliates, forcing a fierce exchange of blows. As Kreja and Loki drag the injured adventurers to safety despite interference from 2 newcomers, the floor boss shows no weakness, driving Rain and Alec into exhaustion. Thinking fast, Rain charges again, baiting the knight to leap, and pins its cloak to the floor with his spear. Alec seizes the moment and, with one precise swing, decapitates the knight as its body collapses lifelessly to the ground. Just when Alec's group thought the battle was over, the knight's body regenerated and stood headless, advancing toward them. Alec realized it was a headless rider, and the giant creature they'd slain earlier must have been its mount. The knight suddenly charged with blinding speed, its blow barely blocked by Alec, who would have died otherwise. Rain leaped in to counterattack, and together they pushed it back. The knight then grabbed its severed head, reattaching it with a surge of dark power before striking Alec again, sending him crashing into a wall. Yora's shield saved him, and after drinking a healing potion, he switched with Rain to recover. The fight raged on while Loki quietly prepared his plan. When Loki finally revealed himself, the arena flared with purple light, terrifying the knight once it realized Loki was a mage, its only true weakness. It dashed forward, cutting Loki down before Alec could react, but the body vanished. It had been an illusion. The trick placed the knight right where Loki wanted, freezing it in icicles. Rain teleported behind it, stabbing before retreating as another fighter joined in. The enraged knight broke free and scaled the wall like a spider, charging at Loki, but then turned toward Kreja. Loki intercepted with a magic blade, holding it off while Yorna bound it with enchanted chains. Though not a warrior, Loki endured long enough for the spell to hold, collapsing afterward and telling Alec to finish the creature with his strongest magic. Alec surrounded the knight with countless magic circles, even more than he'd used against a previous boss, leaving Loki astonished. But the strain from battle was catching up to him, his body trembling under the effort to sustain such complex spells. Forcing himself up, he cast Thunderbolt Acceleration, striking the knight hard, yet it still fought against Yorn's bindings. Struggling to keep it contained, Yorna urged Alec to finish it quickly, though his body was nearly at its limit. This was his second time using such a powerful spell that day, and the mana drain was almost unbearable. Still, with determination burning stronger than the pain, he completed his ultimate. A massive lightning dragon burst forth, vaporizing the knight on impact and ending the fight. As silence returned, Alec collapsed in exhaustion, muttering with a tired grin that having dependable allies made all the difference. Yoran knelt beside him, pointing out that they had relied on him all along since none of them could have defeated that monster without him. Rain feels relieved to see Alec back to his usual powerhouse self and reminds him of their earlier bet. Alec remembers Rain's rule that whoever passed out first would do a dare, and admits he technically lost, though it happened after the fight ended. Deciding to be lenient, Rain's dare is simple. Alec must stop keeping things to himself and talk to Ornest, Yorha, or Kreja whenever something troubles him. Riel approaches to thank the group, followed by Marbel, who surprises Alec with a kiss on the cheek, leaving Yorha horrified. Marbel then invites Alec to raid dungeons with her, but Yorha quickly cuts in, insisting he's their party's magician. As leader, Rue says they owe Alec and offers to write a recommendation for him, which confuses Alec until the others explain that an S-rank promotion requires both a recommendation from an S-rank party and guildmaster approval. Rue assures him he'll handle the latter. With that settled, Alec collects the knight's magic stone, marking the Rechroma rescue mission as a perfect success. Back at the guild, the receptionist congratulates him, noting he's become quite the talk of the guild lately. She asked if Alec had gotten some rest after his big fight, but he assured her he was in perfect shape. After handing him his reward, she stopped him before he could leave, saying he had a visitor from the kingdom of Galina. Surprised since he no longer had any business with them, Alec agreed to meet the visitor and found Vogan waiting. Among everyone at the castle, Vogan was one of the easier ones to deal with, so Alec greeted him politely. But before any pleasantries, Vogan asked if Alec had tried to get Prince Regulus killed by not warning him he was too weak for dungeons. Alec calmly replied that even if he had warned him, Regulus wouldn't have listened. Admitting the truth in that, Vogan still complained that he got stuck with this miserable job after Alec was fired, calling it a waste of his time. Alec asked if that meant Vogan was assigned as Regulus's replacement magician, but Vogan scoffed, saying he was more of a glorified babysitter. After Alec left, Regulus had tried to conquer the 30th dungeon floor alone and ended up badly injured. Vogan had hoped to lecture him, but instead, Regulus blamed everyone else and ordered Vogan to escort him here to confront Alec. When Alec asked if Regulus was in the city, Vogan confirmed he was training underground at the arena right now. Alec hadn't expected to face Regulus again, but he saw it as a chance to end things once and for all. Though he could have ignored him, he chose to confront him directly. As he and Vogan descended the stairs, Vogan remarked that the prince's only redeeming trait was his pride, adding that he never understood why nobles wasted effort proving they were better than commoners. Alec reminded him that he too was a noble, but had never cared for titles, wanting only to live freely. In the arena, they found Regulus waiting. To Alec's surprise, Regulus began by saying the king planned to change how the kingdom was run, something he didn't agree with, but would accept out of respect for his father. For a moment, Alec thought he'd come to his senses until Regulus added that he still refused to heed the words of commoners like Alec. Alec replied that had Regulus listened before, he wouldn't be in this position, but realizing his words meant nothing, he gave up trying. Regulus, raised 15 years to believe himself above all others, could never see that he was the problem. Desperate to prove he wasn't being deceived, Regulus drew his weapons and challenged Alec to a duel, asking Vogan to witness it. He charged first, forcing Alec to defend with his wand, but the prince was caught off guard to see Regulus wielding daggers instead of his usual longsword. Years ago, Alec had advised him to use daggers since his small frame couldn't handle a heavier blade, advice Regulus once ignored but now followed. Yet the change didn't instantly make him stronger. His footwork slipped and Alec easily countered, realizing Vogan had likely influenced this setup. When questioned, Vogan admitted he only told Regulus that if he wanted to deny Alec's strength, he had to prove it through combat. The decision to fight was entirely Regulus's, and to his credit, he sought no unfair advantage, wanting a clean duel. His daggers, being artifacts, struck with power, and when he clashed with Alec, he managed to shatter the prince's shield. But that was the extent of his success. All his training had prepared him for this, yet it only made him realize that Alec's true edge in the dungeon had always been his support magic. After being dismissed, Regulus kept challenging the 30th floor, each time leaving gravely wounded and confused. When he finally read Alec's recovered report, anger turned to regret. Everything written was true, and had he listened, he wouldn't have failed so often. Realizing Alec's brilliance, Regulus asked him to activate his artifact and fight. Alec warned him of their power gap, but Regulus refused to retreat. Before the clash, Alec asked if the king truly planned to reform the royal court. Regulus confirmed, revealing his father's intent to test commoners' strength by sending them into the dungeon. Relieved that the king's kindness had been real, Alec felt his years as a court magician hadn't been wasted. Regulus told him to prepare, yet when Alec charged, he couldn't attack. Regulus trembled, knowing defeat was certain. Alec diverted his strike to the ground, leaving Regulus stunned and demanding why he'd been spared. Stripped of the pride that once defined him, Regulus realized he no longer knew who he was. He'd come ready to die for his lost honor, only to be met with pity. Alec found the situation absurd. He'd come for a duel, not to counsel a broken noble, and his anger faded. When Regulus saw this, he apologized sincerely, surprising Alec. Seeing that Regulus's arrogance was born from his upbringing, Alec forgave him and offered his hand. Regulus hesitated, then returned Alec's old magician cloak and a letter from the king inviting him back. When Alec asked if it was an order, Vogan clarified it was only a request. Alec declined, saying he was content with his current companions. Regulus accepted, insisting Alec keep the cloak since it belonged to him. And as he left with Vogan, a faint smile crossed his face. Both had finally made peace. The next morning, Alec meets his friends and asks if they're free. Yora, Kreja, and Rain say yes, curious about his plans. Alec explains he wants them to show him around Faisal since he's still unfamiliar with the city. Seeing a chance to give Yorha alone time with Alec, Rain, and Krasia make quick excuses and leave the two together. Alec doesn't notice their intentions and Yorha laughs it off, realizing they just set her up for an easy moment. She nearly ruins it by asking if he wants to reschedule, but when Alec says he's fine going with just her, she happily agrees and promises to show him everything Faisal has to offer. Later, as they stroll through the lively city, Yorha explains that Faisal is full of merchants selling weapons, armor, and various adventuring gear, but warns Alec to be wary of scams. Ironically, as she says this, she's already fallen for one, listening intently to a merchant selling a shady pill that supposedly grants endless stamina. Alec instantly senses its danger from the ominous aura it gives off and quickly pulls Yorha away, deciding it's better to leave the shopping to Rain and Krasia, since Yorha can be easily distracted. Though she admits to occasionally falling for scams the last time she sent Rain and Krasia shopping, Rain returned looking like Zoro while Krasia came back with a giant teddy bear, proving they couldn't be trusted either. Alec then offers to handle the party's shopping, and Yorha gratefully agrees. After walking for a while, Alec spots a coffee shop and suggests they take a break. As they sit and enjoy tea, Alec brings up how Rain and Krasia seem to dislike Loki and asks Yorha why. Yorha explains that 2 years ago, they helped an A-rank party in trouble inside a dungeon, joined later by Loki and Rule. Working together, they defeated the floor boss, but Rain was hit by acid spit while protecting another adventurer. Though he tried to act fine afterward, his legs gave out and Loki helped carry him back. However, Rain's spear kept hitting Loki in the head while Rain was unconscious, and in frustration, Loki threw it into the forest. Yorha says Loki likely didn't mean any harm, thinking the damaged spear was worthless, but Rain loved it deeply. When he awoke and learned what happened, he was furious, and though he might forgive Loki if he'd apologize, Loki simply couldn't understand why the spear mattered so much. Since their argument over a spear, Rain and Loki have remained at odds, which Yorha finds ridiculous. Alec agrees but wonders why Krasia dislikes Loki too. Yorha explains that Krasia doesn't have a real reason, she just dislikes his vibe. Later, as Alec and Yorha stroll through town, they reminisce about their days in Galdana when they'd save up to buy potions and when Krasia's potion experiments always ended in failure. While walking, Yorha notices a rare elven ribbon in a stall, an item that boosts magic power, something she's long desired. Unfortunately, it costs 50,000 gil, far beyond her reach. Seeing her disappointment, Alec decides to buy it for her. Yorha hesitates, worried about the cost, but Alec insists it's for the party's benefit since her magic is vital to their teamwork. He also admits he saved plenty as a court magician and wanted to give her something special. Yorha smiles warmly, promising to cherish his gift, and Alec feels content. They spend the rest of the day enjoying the city together, ending it at the clock tower to watch the sunset. As they look out over Faisal, Yorha asks what Alec thinks of the place, and he replies that he loves how free and full of life it feels and makes him feel like a true adventurer. Yorha asks Alec if joining her party is truly what he wants, feeling guilty for inviting him right after his banishment and thinking she might have taken advantage of his situation. She tells him he's free to leave if he wishes, but Alec interrupts, saying he once had things to do in Galana, yet none of that matters anymore. His only goal now is to make their group the strongest in the world, just as Rain suggested, and he knows he can't achieve that without Yorha and the others. Yorha feels relieved and happy hearing his honesty, a rare sight from someone who usually hides his feelings. Alec adds that he just wanted to express himself and admits there's one more thing to say. Blushing, Yorha assumes he's about to confess and leans closer, only for Alec to laugh and reveal he lost a bet with Rain, forcing him to speak his mind. Embarrassed, Yorha realizes he's still oblivious to her feelings and turns away in frustration while Alec remains clueless about her reaction. The next morning, Rain finds Alec asleep among piles of books, tries calling his name, and when he doesn't wake, he yanks off the sheets and shouts for him to get up. Rain tells Alec that real adventurers rise at dawn to prepare for the day, but Alec can't understand how Rain has so much energy so early. Once dressed, they head to the backyard for training, sparring fiercely until Yorha warns them to ease up before someone gets hurt. Ignoring her, they fight even harder until Alec's sword shatters against Rain. Though victorious, Rain calls Alec a monster for keeping up with him despite being a mage, then urges him to bring out his artifact for the next round. Yorha steps in, insisting they stop before it gets dangerous. Just then, Loki arrives and smugly offers to coach them as an S-rank adventurer, but everyone ignores him. Annoyed, he flashes his S-rank ID and reminds them that he recommended their party for an S-rank promotion. Excited, Yorha asks to see the card, but Loki refuses unless Rain apologizes for treating him poorly. Rain declines, and at that moment, Krista and Riel appear, telling Loki to quit bothering them. They reveal that the Guildmaster already approved Yorha's party's S-rank promotion and hand over their new ID cards. The party celebrated their promotion, but Krista told Alec the reward couldn't repay his help and offered her aid whenever he needed it, which he gratefully accepted. Loki suggested celebrating their new S-rank status with lunch, treating everyone to a grand meal at a tavern. Alex, still in disbelief about being part of an S-rank team, was reassured by Rain not to let doubt hold him back, calling this the start of their legend. Yora raised a toast with the tavern's finest drink despite Loki's complaints, and as the night ended, she passed out from drinking too much. Krasia laughed, saying Yora was just happy about the promotion and Alex's choice to stay with them instead of returning to Galana. Just then, Misha rushed in, asking for Krasia's help since the guild was short on healers. Krasia hurried to the infirmary and was shocked to see many wounded adventurers. Misha revealed they weren't hurt by monsters, but by a criminal group called the Shadow Guild. Before Krasia could respond, the guild master summoned her to treat Olivia, a wounded member of the Nameless Party. Liviel explained Olivia had been attacked by the Shadow Guild and was in critical condition, but he trusted Krasia to save her. When Krasia began healing, Olivia suddenly awoke, demanding to know where she was. Krasia explained the situation, and Olivia, furious over the attack, vowed revenge, begging to be healed faster so she could fight again. Krasia refused, warning her it would worsen her condition, but Olivia tried to move anyway before collapsing. Krasia resumed healing until morning, finally falling asleep beside her. Meanwhile, in the city library, Alec was studying the arcane dungeon when Lowerg, an S-rank from the Nameless Party, appeared and invited him to join a labyrinth raid. Krasia later goes to Olivia's room and finds her forcing herself to train with a sword while Liviel watches helplessly. When Krasia questions him, he explains that Olivia refuses to listen to him or discuss what happened with the Shadow Guild, leaving his investigation stuck. Krasia stops Olivia and insists she lie down, but Olivia snaps back, claiming her real issue is her weakened legs and demanding Krasia do her job as a healer. Ignoring the rudeness, Krasia sends Liviel out and begins treating her legs with healing magic. Olivia, surprised by the lack of questions, realizes Krasia already understands she was betrayed and won't pry. Hearing that, Olivia feels ashamed for lashing out and apologizes, admitting she let her own weakness and frustration guide her. Krasia accepts her apology and reassures her with a gentle kiss on the forehead, explaining that her mother used to do it to calm her down, leaving Olivia flustered. Olivia is briefly reminded of her mother when Krasia speaks, and Krasia quickly notices her drifting into thought. When she asks about it, Olivia dodges the question by requesting a drink. Krasia gladly prepares her tea, but before pouring her own cup, Olivia asks for another favor, admitting she hasn't eaten since yesterday and is getting hungry. Krasia offers to fetch some snacks, and the moment she steps out, Olivia slips something into Krasia's cup. Meanwhile, Alec meets Yorha and Rain at home to discuss his meeting with Lord and the proposal for a dungeon raid. Rain, familiar with Lord, explains that Alec was probably surprised by his appearance, but despite looking youthful, Lord is actually an elf over a century old who likes acting cute. Curious about the raid, Ornest asks for details and Alec explains it will take place on the 72nd floor with the goal of clearing it quickly. Lord even promised Alec the dungeon core afterward, which shocks Alec since Nameless has been struggling to clear that final floor for months. Lord noticed Alec's skepticism and explained that his party had unfinished business with the Shadow Guild for injuring one of their own. And while he handled that, he needed Alec's group to clear the dungeon in their place. Yora saw it as a fair trade, but Warner shouted that the offer was suspicious. Giving up dungeon rights and planning to fight the Shadow Guild sounded unreal. Alec agreed it seemed odd, though Yora argued that Lord wasn't the type to set them up. Strange or not, he was the one holding his party together, so she doubted he'd pull something shady. Since guessing wouldn't help, Rain took the core and reminded them that the girl Krasia treated yesterday was from Nameless, meaning they could just ask her to confirm the story. They headed to the guild, but before entering, Misha burst out in a panic and collided with them. When asked what was wrong, she explained that something terrible had happened to Krasia. Inside, they found Krasia barely standing against a wall, and they hurried to help. She assured them she was mostly fine, but revealed she had been drugged, and when she woke up, Olivia was already gone. Krasia quickly realizes Olivia was the one who drugged her, but her worry grows when she suspects Olivia has returned to the labyrinth for revenge. When Rain asks why they should care, she explains Olivia is still injured and in no shape to fight. Rain understands but argues that it was Olivia's choice and that the kingdom's strongest swordswoman shouldn't lose to the Shadow Guild. Krasia agrees Olivia is powerful, yet she recalls Olivia mentioning a traitor and believes someone far stronger than the guild is waiting below, someone who nearly killed her before. Determined not to let Olivia walk into a death trap, Krasia declares she'll go alone if necessary. But when she heads for the door, the others fall in behind her, refusing to let her face the dungeon alone. Together they make for the labyrinth, though Rain grumbles about dealing with its countless teleport traps. Alec asks why, and Rain explains how easy it is to get lost. Marbell adds that parties often get split inside, so they must stay alert. Marbell admits she came because she heard Olivia had fled from guilt and was heading back into the dungeon. She hoped to stop her before she went inside but arrived too late, so she decided to join the group. He also asked her to fill Olivia's role since she's an S-rank swordswoman, though her real motivation was to see Alec's magic up close. Yorha immediately rejects her, insisting their team already has solid chemistry unlike Nameless. When Alec asks what she means, Rain explains that Nameless is technically a party, but its members act like lone adventurers who barely care about each other outside dungeon dives. Olivia especially hates involving others in her affairs and often seems rude, though Marbell knows she's kind underneath. Marbell used to linger around Olivia during training. Olivia tried to shake her off, saying she preferred solitude and only joined Nameless to clear dungeons. But that only pushed Marbell to ask her to raid together, and Olivia eventually accepted. They grew close after that, and while Marbell refused to burden them by tagging along, she still begged them to do everything possible to save Olivia. Before entering the dungeon, Rain tossed Alec a wristband, calling it their secret weapon. Alec didn't know what it did, but trusted Orna and put it on. Not far in, Krazia prepared her own teleportation circle so anyone who fell into a trap could return safely. Rain praised her foresight and patted her head, which she hated, so she drop-kicked him hard enough to send him flying straight into a teleportation trap. Alec rushed to help but stepped on another trap, and both were warped to a random part of the dungeon, mostly thanks to Krazia. Alec landed alone among dozens of monsters and fought through them with repeated thunderbolts until one slipped behind him, only to be shot down by Krazia's arrow. Relieved, he asked how she found him so fast. She explains that Alec's wristband is a Mobius ring, a paired item that keeps wearers from being separated. No matter how many times Alec is teleported, the ring pulls Krazia to his location, so they don't have to worry. Yorha and Orange have the second pair and should manage on their own. Meanwhile, Rain and Yorha are struggling as dozens of monsters chase them. Rain can fight, but Yorha can't, so she raises an earth pillar for protection while Rain jumps down to engage. She grants him a light stamina and speed boost, letting him rush past weaker monsters and decapitate the strongest one in a single strike. The rest flee, and Rain, hoping for a warm-up, is a bit let down. Yorha comes down praising him, which he enjoys, but their mood shifts when they find the floor boss's remains. Yorha is stunned. The creature looks like it was felled by a single sword slash, something she believes no one could do. Rain knows only one person capable of that, Dial, the Blade Master. Elsewhere in the dungeon, the Shadow Guild leader compliments Melee for instantly killing the floor boss and easily defeating the S-rank swordswoman Olivia of Nameless. Melee explains he beat Olivia so easily only because he knows her fighting style. The Shadow Guild leader notes that her shock makes sense, but questions why someone familiar with an S-rank swordswoman would join the Shadow Guild instead of her. Melee simply says their goals align for now, though his true wish differs. He seeks strength and experience, while the guild's motives are unknown to him. Their talk is interrupted when members report intruders on the 72nd floor, prompting the leader to order an immediate kill. Meanwhile, Alec and Krazia find Olivia injured and curled in a corner. She casually asks Krazia to heal her, but Krazia refuses, knowing Olivia will just run off again. Annoyed but determined, Olivia forces herself up despite her wounds, only to be blocked by both of them. Krazia demands to know her real reason for all this and asks if it involves the Shadow Guild, but Olivia scoffs, insisting she'd never lose to them. Her target is her former teacher, the man who let her mother die. She then steps onto a teleportation track to escape, but Alec and Krazia rush in before it activates, and all three are transported straight into a monster den. Alec charges out first to thin the monsters, but the swarm is too large for him alone. Krazia decides to heal Olivia so she can fight, explaining that she'll prepare a teleportation circle but needs time, and both fighters must hold the monsters back. That's all Olivia needs, and she jumps in beside Alec. While Alec's skills are solid, he still can't reach the monster's weak points and is forced to retreat, whereas Olivia cuts clean through them without hesitation. Seeing his struggle, she bluntly tells him to train more since an S rank shouldn't be having this much trouble. Krazia finally completes the circle, but it collapses the moment she activates it, revealing that this part of the dungeon has an anti-magic barrier and nothing will work until the Magic Eater is dealt with. As more monsters close in, Olivia asks Alec if he can outperform his earlier attempt. He says he'll try, and the two launch forward again, Alec quietly observing how swift and precise her strikes truly are. Alec knows Olivia's reputation as the city's strongest swordsman and refuses to look weak, so he ups his effort and cleaves a monster in half, earning a brief nod of approval from her. She tells him he's decent but far from mastering his blade, advising him to stop relying on brute force and start outpacing his enemies. Alec takes the advice to heart, yet it doesn't change their situation. No matter how many monsters they cut down, more keep appearing, leaving them trapped. Olivia asks Krazia whether she's located the Magic Eater behind the anti-magic field, and Krazia points out its direction but insists it's impossible to reach with the horde blocking their way. Olivia rushes off anyway, forcing Alec to draw the monster's attention to buy her time, if he knows he can't hold out long. Krasia warns him about an attack from above, and as he looks up, a vulture monster dives. Alec blocks its talons, the impact nearly cracking the ground beneath him, but he pushes it back, only for it to circle around and strike again while the rest of the swarm closes in. He's nearly overwhelmed until he tricks the vulture into killing one of the Cyclopses, easing the pressure but leaving the vulture as a major threat. Meanwhile, Olivia reaches the Magic Eater, which turns out to be a skeleton creature, and destroys its belt with a stab, ending the anti-magic field. She shouts for Krasia to prepare another teleportation circle, and with his magic restored, Alec unleashes a 5-fold thunderbolt that wipes out the remaining monsters. They all hurry to Krasia before more foes show up and are teleported out of the nest. Once safe, Olivia asks Alec why he hid the fact that he was a mage, embarrassed about criticizing his swordsmanship, but he assures her advice was helpful and says he'll train more once they return to town. Krasia then warns that Olivia may look fine, but healing magic isn't perfect and her wounds could reopen if she keeps fighting recklessly. Remembering Olivia once mentioned a traitor who killed her mother, Krasia asks for the full story, and Olivia finally shares what happened in her childhood. Olivia lost her adventurer mother young and grew up alone until Millie took her in, trained her with a sword, and became the closest thing to a father, someone she clung to while grieving. Her world collapsed during a dungeon raid when, right after praising her improved skills, Millie suddenly struck her down. As she lay dying, he revealed he had killed her mother, a claim supported when she later learned he had once been in her mother's party. Realizing she had admired the man who likely murdered her mother left her shattered, and the scars on her back now fuel her relentless desire for revenge, even though Millie vanished without a trace. With nothing else left in her life, she understands only hatred, a feeling Alec relates to after losing his own purpose when he was dismissed from the royal court. He tells her he found support through friends and believes she has people too, reminding her that Lorg and Marbell genuinely care. Olivia knows they mean well but refuses to involve them, fully aware of how terrifying Melissa's swordsmanship truly is. Rain watches as Yora's threat to strangle the captive with her chains makes him instantly cooperative, admitting his boss ordered them to steal the dungeon core. When she asks about his connection to Melly, he rambles about Melly's absurd strength, bragging that he once defeated a nameless swordswoman and a floor boss alone. Realizing these grunts aren't worth more time, Rain urges Yorha to regroup with Alec and the others so they can later hand the criminals over to the authorities. But the leader warns Rain he underestimated the dungeon cores he had consumed. The stolen energy lets him shatter the floor, snap his chains, leap through the falling rubble, snatch the unconscious Yorha, and flee while telling Rain to come look for him at the dungeon's depths. Elsewhere, Alec, Krasia, and Olivia reach the meeting point expecting Rain and Yorha, but their absence alarms Krasia since they all agreed to regroup here, if separated. Investigating the area, they discover a massive hole that definitely wasn't there before. Olivia realizes the hole in the magically reinforced dungeon makes no sense, yet she descends anyway and finds Yorha's hat, tossing it up to Alec, who immediately fears the worst. Deep below, Shadow Guild members deliver Yorha to their boss, explaining she's the red-haired support mage they've been targeting. When she wakes, she demands to know why she's still alive, but Gloria dismisses her confusion, refusing to explain. Melly urges him to stop teasing her and stick to the plan, and though Gloria insists he's serious about his work, Melly suddenly warns someone is coming. Rain crashes down, kills a guild member, and confronts Gloria, who barely counters with a conjured red sword. The wounded guild member survives thanks to the dungeon core fragments he ate and quickly notices Rain's bracelet, recognizing how it works. He removes Yora's bracelet, knocks her out, and escapes with Melia to continue their plan, leaving Gloria to stall Rain. Confident Rain can't defeat him, Gloria attacks, but Rain breaks his sword and impales him. Gloria collapses in a spray of blood, only to rise again, healing his gaping wound with blood magic and declaring he'll now fight at full strength. Rain quickly senses the red-cloaked stranger is far more dangerous than any healer he's seen, recognizing the man's magic as something darker and far more threatening. Refusing to give him a chance to act, Rain charges in, slashing with his spear and kicking the man back, drawing blood. Without pause, he thrusts his spear through the man's chest, convinced the fight is over, only to watch the mage rise again, laughing as he pulls the spear out himself. Calling Rain thick-headed like the many fools he has faced, the man finally introduces himself as Gloria the Blood Mitch, boasting that he can't die no matter how many times he's struck down. Even decapitation means nothing to him. As his blood begins to glow and climb up his arm, forming a blade, Rain is stunned while Gloria laughs, claiming that pain only makes him stronger and a simple spear won't be enough to beat him. Gloria then brings the blood-forged sword down with terrifying strength, barely missing Rain, who is shocked by the sheer speed of the attack. Taking advantage of Rain's momentary hesitation, Gloria slashes him across the body, leaving several cuts before Rain retreats and narrowly avoids the next strike. Even he realizes he can't keep fighting like this and needs a way around the Blood Mage's annoying technique, but before he can think of a plan, Gloria forms a blood whip and lashes it across Rain's face. Still off balance, Rain is caught again as the whip coils around his legs, yanking him into the air before slamming him into the ground with brutal force. His spear is flung away, and he lies there, struggling to breathe, wondering if this is the end. Gloria mocks him, laughing at his helpless state and calling him nothing more than a punching bag to vent his frustrations on, telling him to prepare to say goodbye to the world. But Rain gathers the last of his strength and forces himself back to his feet, telling Gloria to shut his ugly mouth because he's the one who'll die today. Gloria only laughs harder at Rain's battered appearance, unaware that Rain remembers Alec's advice about letting go of his weapon. Taking it to heart, Rain calls for his spear, sending it flying toward Gloria, who dodges and scoffs at such a simple trick, yet that brief distraction is all Rain needs. He closes the distance and lands a solid punch across Gloria's face, knocking him down, remembering the day he challenged Alec to their first duel. Alec, determined to face Rain in a fair one-on-one fight, insisted on using no magic despite being a mage. Rain mocked him for thinking he could win, yet Alec's talent in anything he committed to was undeniable. Drawing his mana sword, Alec met Rain's spear in a rapid exchange of slashes and thrusts, surprising Rain with his unexpected skill and even forcing him back at times. Refusing to lose, Rain pushed harder until, during one swing, his spear slipped from his grip and lodged itself in the wall, shocking them both. Recovering instantly, Rain switched to his fists and caught Alec off guard, but before the match could reach a conclusion, their teacher stepped in, scolded them, and sentenced them to an afternoon of pulling weeds in the garden. When they finally rested to watch the sunset, Alec admitted Rain's adaptability was incredible and confessed he probably would have lost if the fight hadn't been stopped. Rain smiled at the memory before refocusing on Gloria, who had just stood back up. Not allowing him a moment to breathe, Rain launched forward with a right hook, only for Gloria to block it with a tight crossguard. Rain hammered Gloria's guard with relentless strikes, each hit heavier than the last, until the defense finally collapsed and Rain drove two sharp hooks into his face, followed by an uppercut that launched him into the wall. He yelled for Gloria to stand, convinced the man grew stronger the more Rain cut him, and vowed that if stabbing wasn't enough, he would beat him until he couldn't move. Yet Gloria rose again and, instead of charging, drew two blood-forged daggers from his arms and sliced his own stomach. The spilling blood surged into power, forming a massive magic circle above him that twisted into a tornado aimed to consume Rain. Realizing he couldn't counter it, Rain braced for the end until Alec jumped in and used reflection magic to send the entire attack back at the Blood Mage. Rain thanked him, admitting he would have been finished without that perfectly timed save. Before they could speak further, Gloria staggered out of the flames, wounded but alive. Olivia instantly recognized him as a Blood Mage and warned that he could be trouble but said she'd handle him quickly. Rain then told Alec he couldn't save Yorha, that Bladem and some punk took her right before his eyes. Asha, confused, demanded to know why the Shadow Guild wanted Yorha, but Rain insisted they clearly knew exactly who she was. The punk even called her by name. He orders Alec and the others to chase Yorha while he handles the Blood Mage, but Krasia shuts him down and eases his pain with healing magic. The Blood Mage lashes out in fury, yet Alec reflects the spells again, giving Krasia and Olivia the chance to slip past and pursue Yorha. Gloria catches their trick and tells Alec to quit using that irritating reflection spell, only for Alec to snap back that Gloria should fight without magic if he hates it so much. Olivia throws Rain's spear back at Gloria, leaving him at a disadvantage against the two. Before they can even clash, Gloria collapses, finally realizing how injured he is. Rain mocks him, bragging that his magic is useless against Alec, who could beat him with his eyes closed. Enraged, Gloria rips off the bandages on his arms, revealing strange markings, then releases the sealed magic within, transforming into a monstrous creature with bulging muscles, fangs, and a crimson aura. He charges at Rain and bites into his neck before anyone can react. Alec shocks the Blood Mage away with lightning, but Rain is already motionless. Alec unleashes rapid lightning strikes, only to find Gloria impossibly fast, dodging every bolt as if outrunning lightning itself. Alec shifts tactics by casting a massive magic circle overhead, unleashing lightning in all directions to guarantee it strikes the Berserk Blood Mage. Yet Gloria withstands everything, restoring his full strength with blood magic and forming two razor-sharp daggers from gathered blood. He launches aerial slashes that force Alec to shield both himself and Rain, but the final blow shatters the barrier. Believing Alec is cornered, Gloria prepares to finish him until he realizes Rain has vanished. Spinning around, he spots Rain leaping in with his spear, only for Gloria to catch and parry every strike, driving Rain back and kicking him in the face. Rain quickly sees he's completely outmatched as Gloria's relentless blows push him to the ground again. Turning back to Alec, Gloria mocks him, saying he'll watch his weak friend die helplessly. But Rain isn't done. He rises long enough to plunge his spear into Gloria's stomach, igniting flames. The moment reminds him of a childhood rival, a prodigy with the spear who always beat him effortlessly despite never practicing, while Rain trained endlessly yet could never win. In the end, what Rain couldn't accomplish, Smoking did the genius succumb to lung cancer and died. Fueled by that memory, Rain drives forward, striking Gloria repeatedly and forcing him back, while Alec wonders if this surge will finally secure their victory or if Gloria still has another deadly trick waiting. If you're enjoying the journey of this series, please hit that like and subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any updates. All of your support helps me to keep bringing more high-quality recaps.